Long before the name Genghis Khan echoed across Eurasia, the Mongolian steppe was already one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Entire tribes could vanish in a single season. Alliances that seemed unbreakable dissolved overnight. A respected chief might command thousands one year, only to be hunted like prey the next. Survival depended on far more than courage. It demanded relentless adaptation in a land that showed mercy to no one. The greatest threat was not always the bitter winters or the endless grasslands. It was the people who knew those lands just as well. Neighbor fought neighbor. Cousin betrayed cousin. Children grew up expecting violence as naturally as they expected the changing seasons. Yet from this fractured world would eventually emerge the largest contiguous land empire in history. The question is not simply how one man conquered so much, but why the steppe produced someone like him in the first place. To understand that answer, it is necessary to step into a world that existed before the empire, before the legends, and before history remembered a man called Genghis Khan. For thousands of years, the eastern Eurasian steppe stretched across what is now Mongolia and beyond, forming one of the largest continuous grasslands on the planet. Rivers were scarce, forests were limited, and fertile farmland was almost non-existent. Instead, the land favored mobility. Wealth walked on four legs. Horses, sheep, goats, cattle, and camels determined whether a family prospered or starved. The people who lived there were nomadic pastoralists. Rather than building permanent cities, they followed seasonal grazing routes, moving enormous herds across the plains. Their homes, known today as jairs or yurts, could be dismantled and transported within hours. Mobility was not simply convenient. It was essential for survival in an environment where overgrazing or severe weather could quickly destroy entire livelihoods. Yet the steppe was far from isolated. To the south stood powerful Chinese dynasties. To the west stretched Central Asian trade networks. Caravans carrying silk, horses, silver, and luxury goods crossed nearby routes, creating opportunities for both commerce and conflict. Every neighboring civilization viewed the nomads with a mixture of fear, respect, and necessity. But the steppe itself remained politically fragmented. No single ruler controlled the vast grasslands for long. Instead, dozens of tribes and clans competed for influence, each led by chiefs whose authority depended less on inheritance than on their ability to provide victories, wealth, and protection. That unstable balance would shape every generation born upon the grasslands. The Mongols were only one group among many. Powerful rivals such as the Tatars, Karaites, Naimans, Merkits, and Tayikid all competed for territory, grazing rights, and prestige. Some cooperated through marriage alliances. Others nurtured blood feuds that lasted decades. Every relationship carried the possibility of sudden betrayal. The first lesson every child learned was that loyalty had limits. Raiding formed the rhythm of life across much of the steppe. A successful raid could capture hundreds of horses, valuable livestock, and prisoners who could later be adopted, exchanged, or enslaved. A failed raid could erase generations of accumulated wealth in a single afternoon. Since animals represented both food and status, losing a herd often meant losing the future. This constant competition produced extraordinary horsemen. Children learned to ride almost as soon as they could walk. By adulthood, many could control a horse using only their knees while shooting arrows in every direction. These skills later astonished settled civilizations, but they were never developed for conquest alone. They began as practical tools for hunting, herding, and surviving endless tribal warfare. Even so, military skill alone offered no guarantee of safety. The steppe's greatest enemy often arrived without warning from the sky. Brutal winters, known today as feuds, buried grazing lands beneath deep snow or layers of ice. Livestock starved in enormous numbers. Entire communities faced famine regardless of how wealthy they had been only months earlier. After devastating winters came desperate raids, as starving tribes searched for animals that had survived elsewhere. Nature repeatedly intensified human conflict. Leadership under these conditions demanded constant success. Chiefs rewarded loyal followers with captured animals, land rights, and prestigious marriages. If victories stopped, Supporters frequently abandoned their leader in favor of someone more promising. Political loyalty remained remarkably flexible because survival itself depended on backing whoever appeared strongest. Marriage also served political purposes. Elite families forged alliances by exchanging daughters between tribes, hoping to reduce conflict or gain military partners. Yet these agreements rarely lasted forever. A marriage that secured peace one generation might become the reason for revenge in the next. One kidnapping could ignite years of warfare. Among the steppe peoples, bride capture existed in several forms, ranging from symbolic traditions to violent abductions. Historians continue debating how common each practice truly was, but there is little doubt that forced marriages sometimes triggered bloody feuds between powerful clans. Honor carried tremendous weight, and insults demanded responses that could consume entire tribal confederations. The cycle seemed impossible to escape. Adding even greater complexity were relationships with neighboring empires. Chinese dynasties understood that no wall alone could guarantee security. Instead, they often practiced diplomacy alongside military defense, supporting certain tribes with trade privileges, titles, gifts, or subsidies while encouraging rivalries among others. A united steppe posed a greater danger than several competing tribes. This strategy frequently worked. Some tribal leaders accepted Chinese recognition in exchange for access to valuable goods such as silk, grain, and metal products. Others rejected outside influence entirely. As alliances shifted, yesterday's trading partner could become tomorrow's battlefield opponent. External politics constantly reshaped internal rivalries. Yet no outside power truly controlled the grasslands. Authority rose and collapsed with astonishing speed. Tribal confederations occasionally united under charismatic leaders, creating formidable military coalitions. But once those leaders died or suffered major defeats, the alliances often fractured into competing factions. Personal loyalty outweighed permanent institutions. The political landscape remained in constant motion. Few people realize how dangerous this instability became for ordinary families. A widow whose husband died in battle might suddenly lose the protection of his followers. Children could find themselves abandoned if their clan judged them too weak to support. Captives from defeated tribes were sometimes absorbed into victorious communities, gradually becoming full members. Identity on the steppe proved more flexible than many settled societies understood. These harsh realities rewarded adaptability over tradition. Religion reflected that worldview. Many steppe peoples practiced forms of tengrism, centered on the eternal blue sky, ancestral spirits, and the sacred forces of nature. Rather than relying on monumental temples, spiritual life remained deeply connected to the landscape itself. Mountains, rivers, and the heavens all possessed profound significance. But faith did not eliminate uncertainty. Shamans advised leaders before major decisions, interpreting signs and performing rituals intended to secure divine favor. Whether preparing for migration, diplomacy, or war, spiritual guidance reinforced political authority. Yet, even the most respected shamans could not guarantee victory against famine or betrayal. Everything depended on human decisions. Perhaps the greatest military advantage of the steppe was not superior weapons but unmatched mobility. Nomadic armies carried little unnecessary equipment, traveled enormous distances, and lived largely from their herds. Warriors often maintained several horses, changing mounts throughout long campaigns to preserve speed and endurance. This logistical flexibility later shocked armies accustomed to slower supply systems. That innovation emerged naturally from everyday life. Even communication reflected the demands of mobility. News traveled rapidly through networks of riders, merchants, and allied clans. A major victory or catastrophic defeat could become known across vast regions within days. Reputation spread almost as quickly as armies themselves, shaping alliances before battles even began. Still, historians caution against oversimplifying this world. Older portrayals often described the steppe as a lawless wilderness inhabited by little more than violent raiders. Archaeology and modern scholarship paint a far richer picture. Excavations reveal sophisticated craftsmanship, extensive trade connections, imported luxury goods, and evidence of long-distance cultural exchange. Nomadic societies were neither primitive nor isolated. They simply organized themselves differently from agricultural civilizations. Another common misconception is that every steppe warrior fought under a single Mongol identity. Before Genghis Khan, no unified Mongol nation existed in the modern sense. Tribal loyalties remained stronger than broader ethnic unity. Bringing these rival groups together required an extraordinary political transformation rather than merely military conquest. Scholars also continued debating the exact size and structure of early tribal populations because written records from the steppe itself are limited. Much of what survives comes from Chinese chronicles, Persian historians, and later Mongol accounts, each written with different priorities and biases. By comparing archaeological evidence with these written sources, historians continue refining their understanding of this complex society. One discovery has proven especially revealing. Burial sites across Mongolia contain imported objects from distant civilizations alongside locally crafted weapons and horse equipment. These finds demonstrate that steppe communities participated in networks reaching thousands of miles beyond the grasslands. The world that produced Genghis Khan was never isolated from global history. It stood at the crossroads of continents long before a single empire united them. That broader perspective changes how we see what came next. The rise of Genghis Khan was not a miracle that appeared from nowhere, nor was it simply the story of one extraordinary individual. It was the product of generations shaped by relentless competition, unforgiving geography, fragile alliances, and a culture where survival demanded constant adaptation. Every hardship that divided the tribes also taught them the skills that would eventually reshape the known world. The endless grasslands forged unmatched riders. Tribal rivalries refined military leadership. Harsh winters rewarded resilience. Political instability revealed the value of unity. The brutal world before Genghis Khan became the training ground for an empire that would stretch from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. In the end, the greatest legacy of the pre-imperial steppe was not endless conflict. It was the creation of a people uniquely prepared to transform adversity into power. Before history remembered the empire, the grasslands had already written the lessons that made it possible.